Do you think NVIDIA may be worth 10 trillion at some point? Let's ask it this way. What does the future of the world look like where that's true?
I think that NVIDIA's growth is is extremely likely and, in my mind, inevitable. And let me explain why. We're the largest computer company in history. That alone should beg the question, why? And the reason, of course, two reasons. First, two foundational technical reasons. The first reason is that computing went from being a retrieval-based file retrieval system. Almost everything is a file. We pre-write something, we pre-record something, we draw something, we put it on the web, we put it in a file, and we use a recommender system, some smart filter, to figure out what to retrieve for you. And so we were a human pre-recording and file retrieving system. That's what a computer is, largely. To now, AI computers are contextually aware, which means that it has to process and generate tokens in real time. So we went from a retrieval-based computing system to a generative-based computing system. We're going to need a lot more processing in this new world than in the old world. We need a lot of storage in the old world. We need a lot of computation in this new world. And so that's the first part of it. We fundamentally changed computing and the way how computing is done. The only thing that would cause it to go back is if this way of computation, this way of computing, generating information that's contextually relevant, situationally aware, that is grounded on new insight before it generates information, this computation-intensive way of doing computing would only go back if it's not effective. So if for the last 10, 15 years while we're working on deep learning, if at any single moment I would have come to the conclusion that you know what, this is not going to work out. I think this is a dead end, or it's not going to scale. It's not going to solve this modality. It's not going to be used in this application. Then, of course, I would feel very differently about it. But I think the last 5 years has given me more confidence than the previous 10 years. The second idea is computers, because it was a storage system, it was largely a warehouse. We're now building factories. Warehouses don't make much money. Factories directly correlates with a company's revenues. And so the computer did two things. Not only did it change the way it did it, its purpose in the world changed. It's no longer a computer, it's a factory. A factory is used for generation of revenues. We're now seeing not only is this factory generating products, commodities that people want to consume, we're seeing that the commodities are so interesting, so valuable, so to so many different audiences, that the tokens are starting to segment like iPhones. Mm-hmm. You have free tokens, you have premium tokens, and you have several tokens in the middle. Yeah. And so intelligence, as it turns out, is a scalable product. There's extremely high intelligence products, tokens that are used for specialized things. People be willing to pay, the idea that somebody's willing to pay $1,000 per million tokens is just around the corner. It's not if, it's only when. And so now we're seeing that the commodity that this factory makes is actually valuable and is revenue generating and profit generating. Now the question is, how many of these factories does the world need? How many tokens does the world need? And how much is society willing to pay for these tokens? And what would happen to the world's economy if the productivity were to improve so substantially? What would happen? Are we going to discover new drugs, new products, new services? And so when you take these things in combination, I am absolutely certain that the world's GDP is going to accelerate in growth. I'm absolutely certain the percentage of that GDP that will be used for computation, will be 100 times more than the past because it's no longer a storage unit. It's a product generation unit. And so when you look at it in that context, and then you back into what does NVIDIA do, and how much of that new economics, new industry would we have the benefit to address? I think we're going to be a lot bigger. And then the rest of it, to me, is is it possible for NVIDIA to be a, $3 trillion revenues company in the near future? The answer is, of course, yes. And the reason for that is because it's not limited by any physical limits. There's nothing that I see that says, gosh, $3 trillion is not possible. And as it turns out, NVIDIA's supply chain the burden is shared by 200 companies. And the fact that we scale out on the backs with the partnership of this ecosystem, the question is, do we have the energy to do so? And surely we will have the energy to do so. And so all of these things combined, that number is just a number, And I still remember NVIDIA was the first time we crossed $1 billion. I was reminded of a CEO who told me, Jensen, it's theoretically impossible for a fabless semiconductor company to exceed $1 billion. And I won't bore you with why, but of course it's illogical, and there's a lot of evidence we're not. And then somebody told me, Jensen, you'll never be more than $25 billion because of some other company. Somebody told me that you'll never be, because, and then so those aren't first principle reason thinking. And the simple way to think about that is, what is it that we make, and how large is the opportunity that we can create? Now, NVIDIA is not in the market share business. Almost everything that I just talked about don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that's hard. If NVIDIA was a $10 billion company trying to take NVIDIA's share, then it's easy to see for shareholders that, oh yeah, if they could just take 10% share, they could be this much larger. But it's hard for people to imagine how large we could be because there's nobody I could take share from, And so I think that's one of the challenges for the world is the imagination of the future. But I got plenty of time, and I'll keep reasoning about it, and I'll keep talking about it, and every single GTC will become more and more real, and then more and more people will talk about it. And one of these days, we'll get there. But I'm 100% we'll get there.
Yeah, this view of token factories, essentially, this token per second per watt, and every token having value. Like, it's an actual thing that brings value, and it brings different kinds of value, different amounts of value to different people, but it's value. That's the actual product. It's really could be loosely thought of as the token. And so you have a bunch of token factories, and then it's very easy from first principles to imagine a future, given all the potential things that AI can solve, that you're going to need an exponential number more of token factories.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, the reason why I was so excited about it, the iPhone of tokens arrived.
What do you call it? Wait, are you saying OpenClaw's iPhone?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Agents.
Yeah, agents. True.
Agents in general. The iPhone of tokens arrived. It is the fastest growing application in history. It went straight up.
Yeah.
Went straight up.
That says something.
Yup. There's no question OpenClaw is the iPhone of tokens.
Yeah, there's something truly, as you know, something truly special happening from about December, where people really woke up to the power of Claude Code, of Codex, of OpenClaw. I mean, I've embarrassed to admit that on the way here in the airport, this is the first time I've done this in public. I was programming, quote unquote, by talking to my laptop.
Exactly.
And I was embarrassed because I was pretending like I'm talking to a human colleague. I'm not sure how I feel about the future where everybody is walking around talking to their AI, but it's such an efficient way to get stuff done.
And it's more likely that your AI is bothering you all the time. And the reason for that is because it's getting stuff done so fast.
Yeah.
It's reporting back to you, I got that done. What do you want me to do next? That's the part that I think most people don't realize is the person who's going to be chatting with them, texting them most, is their claws or lobster.